Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the iFi Zen Dac. This is made by iFi Audio and they're out of Southport, UK. The current price on this unit is $129.99, and that is in US dollars. This is a desktop USB DAC headphone amp combination. This unit supports, from its USB input, PCM, DXD, DSD, and MQA. And give you a closer look at this. And starting here on the left, you have your power match button, which is basically a gain control that gives you two different gain levels. You have the true bass button, which is pretty much just a bass boost, and then you have your volume control, and then you have a standard 6.3 millimeter single-ended headphone output and a 4.4 millimeter balanced Pentacon headphone output. On the rear you have your 5-volt DC power input, and this does not come with a separate transformer or power supply, but it does run off of your USB input that supplies your 5 volts DC. Then you have your RCA outputs, which are either fixed or preamp, which you have a switch here that switches, so your volume is either fixed or controlled by the volume knob on the front. And then you have a second 4.4 millimeter balanced Pentacon output on the back. This unit is recommended by iFi for headphones anywhere from 16 ohms to 600 ohms. They rate the power on this from the 6.3 millimeter headphone output at 230 milliwatts into 32 ohms, and from the 4.4 millimeter balanced output at 330 milliwatts into 32 ohms. The total harmonic distortion is rated at 0.05%, and the signal to noise ratio is rated at 113 decibels, and these are both from the headphone outputs. The weight of this unit is 1.8 pounds. It's actually very solid and has pretty substantial weight for a small unit like this. The dimensions are 6 1/4 inches wide by 4 5/8 inches deep from front to back. That would include the volume knob, and about 1 3/8 inches tall. The test equipment that I used in reviewing this, and this is because this unit only has one input, and that would be USB. So I used my desktop computer, which is a fairly new HP. I'm not sure of the model number, but it's a higher end desktop with 4K resolution, all that. Anyway, I ripped CDs to the computer and WAV in full resolution, and that's what I used to review this as a DAC and headphone amp. I only have one cable right now with a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon connection, and it has 3.5 millimeter connections at the headphone end. So the two headphones that I use to review this would be primarily the Hi-Fi Man Sundara and the LSA HP2. I used a combination of different music, some rock, some pop, some electronic, mostly acoustical music and a little bit of orchestral music. And getting into the sound of this, the first thing I did is I was concerned about the power supply coming from the USB port and my computer supplying that, because I know if I listen to headphones from my computer, it does have a headphone jack, there's a lot of background noise. So the first thing I want to know was, is that background noise from my computer being transferred to this? And so what I did is I hooked up a pair of Grotto SR80E headphones, which are very efficient. They're I believe about 103 decibels at 1 milliwatt, and they're 32 ohms. So they're very easy to drive. So what I did is I hooked this up to my computer, went to my Windows Media, and set it up to listen to CDs from the computer. And when I paused the play, even with the gain on low, which I normally listen to with the Grottos, even turning the volume knob all the way up, I didn't hear any hiss or any background noise at all. And even when switching the gain control to high gain, which I don't even really need with the Grottos, I could still, with the music on pause, I could turn the volume all the way to the max and still not pick up any background hiss at all. So somehow, even being fed through the USB cable, the 5 volts DC, this thing manages to be extremely quiet. I mean, just dead quiet, no background noise at all. As far as the sound of this, I would describe, and I've had a couple months to listen to this, and I apologize for the long time between my first impressions and my full review of this. I had to take about 5 weeks off to take care of some personal problems, and so it's a little longer than I planned, and I appreciate you waiting. But anyway, my impression of this on the sound is, I would say it's slightly warm of neutral, and a little bit on the bassy side of neutral, and just sort of a smooth liquid sound. It's actually very pleasant to listen to, and I really do enjoy it a lot. I tried several different headphones, and the first thing I wanted to do is try out some IEMs or earbuds in this, because it has the true bass button, which is a bass boost, and I said I would talk about that in a few minutes. And the truth is, with most headphones, I wouldn't use it. It's just kind of too much bass, a little bit overwhelming to me, but I am not a bass head. I prefer headphones that are basically neutral, or maybe up to about 3 decibels of boost on the bass, but I don't like a whole lot of bass. So basically, most of the headphones I tried with this, the bass boost was a little bit too much. The Grotto SR80 depended on the music. Sometimes I liked the bass boost, sometimes I didn't. But I did try it with a couple of earbuds. One would be the Venture Electronics Monk Plus, and the other would be the Apple EarPods. And actually with those, and both of those I'm running low gain, but the bass boost did make them sound really nice. It did help a lot, especially the Apple EarPods. It made them quite enjoyable. They're not bad. And I did a review on those maybe probably about a year and a half ago, and they're not bad for the money. I think they sell for about 29 bucks, and that's the EarPods, not the AirPods. So anyway, the bass boost was nice. It made those sound good. Basically, the rest of the headphones, it was just a little bit too much for me. Anyway, I did listen to it quite a bit with the Grotto SR80, and it had a really nice sound. And I could use the high gain on it, but low gain was plenty. I did use the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, and the Sundara is kind of power hungry. It's not the most power hungry headphone in the world, but it is a little power hungry, and I tried it both ways. I tried it from the single-ended output, and I did try it from the balanced output with the Pentacon cable, and the power increase from the balanced output did help. With the Sundara, I did notice a difference. I did think that it sounded more solid. The bass was a little better controlled from the balanced output, and the soundstage sounded a little bit wider and a little bit more layered and three-dimensional to me. So I did, and going back and forth between the two outputs with that, I did actually see some improvement with the balanced output. I also use the LSA HP2, which is quite a bit more efficient than the Sundara, and I could use that with the low gain, but I did use it with high gain most of the time. But you know, I only had the volume knob at like maybe 10 or 11 o'clock on high gain, and more than enough power for a headphone like that. And I did want to talk about that a little bit because I did power test this headphone amp. And the way I usually do that, I use the headphone that I have that requires the most power to sound good. And that would be the Hi-Fi Man HE560. Okay, the HE560 will play loud enough with an amp that's not providing enough power, but it will sound flat, and it will lack bass, and it will lack weight to the sound, and the treble can get a little harsh on it, and they just like a lot of power. So anyway, getting enough volume. Oh, and I did want to mention that my HE560, I do not have a cable that will work on the 4.4 millimeter balanced output. I had to use the 6.3 because my 560 uses 2.5 millimeter plugs at the headphone end, and I only have one cable. Well, I've got two cables for that, one with the 6.3 single-ended amp end, and the other with a 4.4 or 4 pin XLR plug. So I had to use the 560 from the single-ended output on this. So that was a pretty severe test because there's been some pretty nice amps that fell short from their single-ended outputs powering that headphone. But I did want to say that I was actually pleasantly surprised. This amp, and I'm not saying that they make the HE560 sound as good as something like, you know, the Master 9 from Audio GD, or say the Milo from Wells Audio. So it doesn't have anywhere near that power. So it doesn't take total control. But I will say that this amp actually did a decent job with the 560 from the single-ended output. With the volume knob at about 2 o'clock, they were actually quite loud and actually had pretty solid bass and didn't sound like they were being underpowered. So I was really surprised. This actually did do a pretty decent job, and that's a really hard to drive headphone. So something like the Sundara, which is fairly hard to drive, especially from the balanced output, this amp seems to have plenty of power. And I was surprised because it's only rated at 230 milliamps into 32 ohms from the single-ended output and only 330 from the balanced output, but yet it actually did a pretty decent job with the Hi-Fi Man HE560, which really surprised me. So other than that, I did want to compare this to one other amp, and actually there's a couple. Right now I'm reviewing the Topping E30 DAC, but I don't have the matching amp yet. That would be the Topping L30. When I do get that, I want to do a comparison between those. Those are about twice the price because each unit is about the price of this, entire unit, combination amp and DAC. So it's not really a fair comparison, but I probably will do a video comparing those at a later point. I did get a chance to compare this to the JDS Labs Atom amp that I do have. And basically, I would say that this amp, compared to the Atom, I would say is a little bit warmer, a little bit bassier, and has more of a smoother, more liquid sound, where the Atom has a little more detail, but it's also a little drier and a little more analytical. So I guess it kind of depend on the mood I was in. Sometimes I want to hear every last detail, so I'd probably go for the Atom, where this amp isn't the last word in detail, but it does have a nice smooth liquid sound to it, which it has a very low fatigue factor. I did want to point out though that the high gain on this is about halfway in between the low and high gain on the JDS Atom. On high with the HE560, I had to go to about 2 o'clock on this amp to reach a pretty loud level, where on the JDS Atom I was only at about 11 o'clock on the volume knob to reach the same volume level. So the JDS in high gain does have more power than this, and once again it does a real good job with the HE560. So basically what it comes down to is this amp costs $129. You're getting a DAC and an amp. Okay, if you're plugging your headphones into your computer, if you're using your computer's DAC and you're using your computer's headphone jack, this is a huge improvement over that. I mean, there's just no comparison. The background is dead silent on this. You're not going to get all that hiss and noise from your computer. It has far more power, and it just sounds, I mean, just so much better than the outputs of my computer. So for $129, you can make a huge upgrade to your sound rather than using your computer's DAC and headphone jack. Basically, what it comes down to is, can I recommend this? And without a doubt, yes. I personally can't imagine being able to get a combination DAC and headphone amp for this price that could be any better. And I mean, this thing, like I said earlier, it supports PCM, DXD, this thing supports DSD and MQA. It does everything. It has a bass boost, it has 2 gain selections, it's got single-ended and balanced output. It can be used as a preamp. This thing does pretty much everything, and it's $129, and so far I haven't seen anything that even comes close for that price. So yeah, you can get amps cheaper than that, some nice amps, but they don't include a DAC. So we'll keep looking, but for now, this comes highly recommended by me. I don't think that, or I'm sure it's going to be really hard to beat this for the price. All the features, all the, and the sound quality. This thing sounds really good. And yeah, this is probably going to go on my best of 2020 list. Realize I'm doing my review. It's about January 4th, but I haven't done my best of 2020 list, and I'm sure this is going to be on it. Most bang for the buck. Headphone amp and DAC for $129 and excellent sound quality. So yes, highly recommended. Well, I'm going to wrap up this video now, and just wanted to let you know that I thank you for watching my video, and once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you are all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We're up over 9,500 members now, so hope to see you there. And once again, thanks.